The dust never settles in my mouth. 23 years later, I still taste it. That Afghan sand mixed with diesel fuel and something else. Something that sticks to your teeth and won't wash out, no matter how much whiskey you pour down your throat. The radio was crackling. Static mixed with Rodriguez's voice, high and tight with panic. Contact left. Fucking contact left. The RPG whistled overhead, close enough to feel the heat signature burn across my neck. Jenkins was on the ground, his left leg bent wrong, screaming for his mama like they all do when the adrenaline wears off and the pain floods in. I was 24 years old, second lieutenant fresh out of West Point with a head full of tactics and a heart full of righteous American fury. I thought I knew what war looked like. I thought I understood what it meant to lead men into hell and bring them back home. I was wrong about everything. Thompson, we called him Tommy Gun because he could make that M240 sing like Beethoven, was dragging Jenkins toward cover behind a blown-out compound wall. The insurgents had us pinned down good. Maybe 8 or 9 muzzle flashes coming from a cluster of mud brick buildings about 200 meters out. Standard ambush. Textbook, really. Let the convoy roll into the kill zone, then light it up from 3 sides. Dust off. We need dust off now! Sergeant Martinez was working the radio, calling for medevac while trying to keep his head down. Blood was pooling under Jenkins, dark and thick in the dust. That's when I made the call. The call that still wakes me up at 0:30, sweating through sheets that smell like fear and regret. I should have waited. Should have called for air support. Should have taken the time to get proper coordinates. Should have done 100 different things. But Jenkins was bleeding out, and Tommy Gun was exposed, and the whole fucking mission was going sideways fast. So I gave the order. Grid coordinates. Fire mission. Danger close. Broken arrow. This is Chaos 6. Fire mission. Grid 41R. QQ 112345 67890. Danger close. Danger fucking close. We need steel on target now. 18 months earlier. I grew up in Ohio. Small town called Millfield, where the biggest excitement was Friday night football and the occasional barn fire. Dad worked the steel mill until his lungs gave out, and Mom cleaned houses for rich folks up in Columbus. We weren't poor exactly, but we weren't rich either. Just stuck in that American middle where you work hard and hope it's enough. The recruiter came to school my senior year. Staff Sergeant Williams, all spit and polish in his dress blues, talking about honor and duty and serving your country. But what got me wasn't the patriotic speeches. It was the practical stuff. College paid for. Leadership training. A chance to be something more than another factory worker watching his dreams rust away in industrial Ohio. September 11th happened my sophomore year at the academy. Watching those towers fall on the TV in the cadet lounge, something shifted inside all of us. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This was personal. By the time I graduated in 2008, we'd been at war for 7 years. Afghanistan was the good war, the righteous war, the one where we were hunting the bastards who killed 3,000 Americans. Iraq was winding down, but the Stan was heating up. Obama was talking surge, and every new lieutenant knew where we were headed. I got assigned to the 82nd Airborne, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, home of the All-American Division and some of the finest soldiers I've ever had the honor to serve with. My platoon was a mix of combat veterans rotating back and fresh-faced kids straight out of basic. Martinez was my platoon sergeant, a short, stocky guy from El Paso who'd done 3 tours in Iraq and knew how to keep young soldiers alive. He had this way of explaining things that cut right through the bullshit. "Lieutenant," he'd say, "in combat, perfect is the enemy of good enough. You make the best decision you can with the information you have, then you live with it." Rodriguez was our RTO, radio telephone operator, 20 years old and scared as hell but trying not to show it. He'd joined up after his factory job got outsourced to Mexico. "Better to get shot at in Afghanistan than starve in Michigan," he used to say. Jenkins was the baby of the platoon. 18 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, looked like he belonged in a Norman Rockwell painting instead of a war zone. He'd joined straight out of high school because his girlfriend got pregnant and he needed the steady pay. Sent most of his combat pay home to support little Emma, had pictures of her taped inside his helmet. And Thompson, Tommy Gunn, the big man from Alabama who could carry a .240 Bravo machine gun like it weighed nothing and had a laugh that could wake the dead. He'd been my roommate at airborne school, and when I found out he was getting assigned to my platoon, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Having someone you trust watching your six in a combat zone, that's worth more than gold. We deployed to Fob Shank in September 2009. Shank was a dust bowl carved out of the Afghan mountains, surrounded by HESCO barriers and razor wire. Home to maybe 800 soldiers from a dozen different units, all trying to bring democracy and stability to a country that had been at war since before my grandfather was born. The base smelled like diesel fuel, burning trash, and unwashed soldiers. The chow hall served mystery meat and powdered eggs, but it was hot, and it was food. The living quarters were plywood CHUs, containerized housing units that baked during the day and froze at night. But we were alive, we were together, and we had a mission. Our AO, area of operations, covered about 50 square kilometers of some of the most beautiful and deadly terrain on Earth. Mountains that rose like cathedral spires, valleys green with poppy fields, and villages that had seen every empire from Alexander to the Soviets come and go. The people were hard to read. Some were grateful for the schools and clinics we were building, others just wanted us gone, and some, too many, were actively trying to kill us. The mission. December 15th, 2009. I remember the date because it was Jenkins's birthday. Kid was turning 19, and Martinez had somehow scrounged up enough ingredients to bake him a cake in one of those little field ovens. Nothing fancy, just yellow cake mix and chocolate frosting from MRE components, but it was the thought that counted. We were supposed to be doing a presence patrol, show the flag, talk to village elders, make sure the locals knew we were around, and keeping the Taliban honest. Routine stuff. The kind of mission that should have been boring. Intelligence said the valley was quiet. No significant enemy activity in the past 2 weeks. Local nationals had been friendly, even helpful. Some of the village kids had been coming around the fob, begging for candy and soccer balls. Should have been a milk run. We rolled out at Uro 600 in a convoy of 4 MRAPs, mine-resistant, ambush-protected vehicles that looked like something out of a Mad Max movie. Big, ugly, and armored thick enough to survive most IED blasts. Each truck carried 6 soldiers, plus crew-served weapons and enough ammunition to level a small city. I was in the lead vehicle with Martinez, Rodriguez, and 3 other soldiers. Tommy Gunn was in the second truck with Jenkins and the rest of the squad. Standard operating procedure: spread your leadership out so one lucky shot can't decapitate your entire command structure. The drive to the village took about 30 minutes through terrain that shifted from rocky desert to green valley. Afghanistan is beautiful in a way that sneaks up on you. Those mountains rising up like God's own cathedral, morning mist hanging in the valleys, snow on the distant peaks catching the early sunlight. Hard to believe such a beautiful place could be so deadly. We reached the village around 07:30. Population maybe 300 people living in mud brick compounds scattered along a shallow river. Goats and chickens wandering the streets, kids playing soccer with a ball made of rags and tape. The meeting with the village elder went well. He was an old man named Haji Abdul, white beard down to his chest, eyes like pieces of flint. He spoke enough English to get his point across, supplemented by our interpreter, a young Afghan named Farid, who'd been working with coalition forces for 2 years. The Taliban, they come at night, Haji Abdul explained. They take our sons, they take our food. They say Americans are infidels, but Americans bring medicine for sick children. Taliban only bring threats. We discussed security, talked about setting up a more regular patrol schedule, promised to coordinate with Afghan National Army units operating in the area. Standard counterinsurgency stuff: win hearts and minds, build local capacity, deny enemy freedom of movement. Everything was going according to plan. Then Jenkins spotted something that made his blood run cold. "Say, Lieutenant," he called out, voice tight with tension, "you need to see this." He was standing next to our lead vehicle, pointing at a small depression in the dirt road we'd traveled to get into the village. Fresh digging, loose soil, the kind of disturbance that usually means one thing in Afghanistan: IED. Martinez confirmed grimly. Fuckers planted it after we passed through. They're planning to hit us on the way out. I felt my stomach drop. Classic ambush setup. Let the Americans drive into the village, then block their exit route and hit them when they try to leave. Probably had spotters watching us right now, waiting for us to move. "Rodriguez, get on the radio. Tell base we've got a possible IED on our egress route. Request EOD and QRF backup." EOD was explosive ordnance disposal, the crazy bastards who made a living disarming bombs. QRF was quick reaction force, additional troops who could come bail us out if things went sideways. "Roger that, sir." Rodriguez started working the radio, trying to raise FOB shank on the command frequency. That's when the shooting started. The first shot came from somewhere in the hills north of the village. High-velocity crack that every infantry soldier recognizes instantly. Sniper. The round took a chunk out of the mud brick wall about 6 inches from Rodriguez's head. "I contact north," Martinez bellowed. "Take cover." More shots started coming in. AK-47s mostly. That distinctive popping sound that tells you someone's trying to kill you with Soviet-era hardware. Maybe 8 or 9 shooters spread across a ridgeline about 400 meters out. We found cover behind our vehicles and started returning fire. M4 carbines, M240 machine guns, and the big 50 cal mounted on the lead truck. The village erupted in chaos. Civilians running for cover. Goats bleeding in terror, dust and smoke filling the air. Jenkins was behind the second truck with Tommy gun, laying down suppressing fire with his M4. Kid was calm under pressure. I'll give him that. Aimed shots, good fire discipline, exactly like we'd trained him. "Rodriguez, where's that backup?" "Working on it, sir. EOD is 20 minutes out. QRF is 30. 30 minutes. In a firefight, 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours. The enemy fire was getting more accurate. Rounds pinging off armor, kicking up dirt all around us. These weren't untrained farmers with AK-47s. This was coordinated, disciplined shooting. Professional fighters who knew how to use terrain and concealment. "Martinez, we need to move. They've got us pinned down here." "Roger that, sir. Where to?" That was the question, wasn't it? The IED blocked our route out. Enemy fighters had the high ground to the north. East was open ground that would leave us exposed. West was the village, full of civilians we couldn't endanger. Which left south. A narrow valley that led deeper into the mountains, away from the base, but at least it was cover. "South," I called out. "We move south to that ravine, get some cover, call in air support." "What about the IED?" Martinez asked. "We'll have to risk it. Better than sitting here getting shot to pieces." I started giving movement orders, coordinating our withdrawal, bounding overwatch. One team provides covering fire while the other moves, then reverse. Basic infantry tactics, but harder to execute when people are shooting at you. Tommy Gunn and his team moved first, Jenkins right behind him. They made it about 50 meters before the world exploded. The IED was bigger than we'd thought. Not just an artillery round buried in the road. This was a complex device. Multiple charges designed to flip a 20-ton MRAP and kill everyone inside. The blast wave hit us like a physical wall, knocking me flat on my back, ears ringing, vision blurred, dust and debris raining down like hail. For a few seconds, I couldn't hear anything except a high-pitched whine that seemed to come from inside my skull. When my vision cleared, I saw the second MRAP on its side, smoke pouring from the engine compartment. Tommy Gunn was crawling away from the wreckage, blood streaming down his face, dragging something behind him. It was Jenkins, or what was left of him. The explosion had taken his left leg below the knee, bone and meat and torn fabric mixing together in a way that made my stomach lurch. He was conscious, screaming, trying to hold the pieces of himself together with hands that shook like autumn leaves. Medic, fucking medic. Our platoon medic, Doc Peterson, was already moving. Combat lifesaver bag in one hand, IV kit in the other, running through gunfire like it was a Sunday stroll in the park. But the enemy fire was getting heavier. More shooters had joined the party, and they could see we were hurt. Wounded prey draws predators like blood draws sharks. "We need to get him out of here," Doc shouted over the noise. "He's losing too much blood." That's when I made the decision that still haunts me. The decision that turned me from a leader into a killer, from a soldier into a monster. I called for artillery, danger close, fire mission on grid coordinates that I estimated, guessed at, hoped were accurate. Broken Arrow, this is Chaos 6. Fire mission. Grid 41R QQ 112345 67890. Danger close. We have wounded and need immediate suppression. Chaos 6. This is Broken Arrow. Confirmed danger. Close fire mission. How close is danger close? Broken Arrow. Friendlies are 200 meters south of target. Fire for effect. There was a pause on the radio. Artillery guys hate danger close missions. Too many ways for it to go wrong. Chaos 6. Confirm you want steel on target with friendlies 200 meters out. Confirmed. We need it now. The first rounds hit about 10 seconds later. 155mm high explosive shells that turned the mountainside into a moonscape. The enemy fire stopped immediately. Hard to shoot when you're trying not to get vaporized by American artillery. But something was wrong. The impact pattern was off. Instead of hitting the ridgeline where the enemy fighters were positioned, the shells were falling short, falling into the valley where civilians lived. "Check fire! Check fire!" I screamed into the radio. "You're hitting the village!" Too late. 3 rounds had already impacted. 3 high-explosive shells in a village full of families who'd been nothing but friendly to American forces. When the smoke cleared, we found them. 7 civilians dead. 2 children, 3 women, 2 old men. Bodies torn apart by American firepower called in by an American officer who was too scared and too young and too fucking stupid to get the coordinates right. Among the dead was Haji Abdul, the village elder who'd been helping us fight the Taliban. The man who'd been our ally, our source of information, our bridge to the local population. The man I'd killed with my own stupidity. Tommy Gunn found me sitting in the rubble, staring at what was left of a little girl's doll. Pink plastic melted by the heat of the explosion. "Lieutenant," he said quietly, "we need to move. QRF is 5 minutes out." I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what I'd done. Jenkins survived. Doc Peterson and the medevac team got him stabilized and flown to the trauma center at Bagram. He lost the leg, but he lived. Got a medical discharge and a Purple Heart and a lifetime of physical therapy. The village never forgave us, never trusted us again. The Taliban moved in 2 weeks later, and the locals welcomed them with open arms. Can't say I blamed them. Coming home, I finished my deployment, came home to a hero's welcome that felt like a slap in the face. Yellow ribbons and parades and people thanking me for my service, when all I could think about was that little girl's doll melting in the Afghan dirt. They gave me a Bronze Star for exceptional leadership under fire. The citation talked about my decisive action and tactical expertise that saved the lives of American soldiers. They didn't mention the 7 civilians who died because I couldn't read a map properly. I got out of the army 6 months later. Couldn't stand wearing the uniform anymore. Couldn't stand the weight of those lieutenants' bars on my shoulders. Started drinking too much, sleeping too little, jumping every time a car backfired or a door slammed too hard. Tried college for a while, using my GI Bill benefits to study engineering. But sitting in lectures about structural dynamics when I knew how buildings fell apart under artillery fire felt like a joke. Dropped out after 1 semester. Tried a couple of different jobs, construction work, security guard, even tried selling insurance for a while. Nothing stuck. How do you explain to potential employers that you've killed people, that you wake up screaming, that the smell of diesel fuel makes you want to vomit? Ended up in a small apartment outside Cleveland, living on disability payments and trying to drink away the memories. No wife, no kids, no future worth talking about. Just me and a bottle and the ghosts of 7 people I'd never met but killed anyway. Tommy Gunn tried to stay in touch for a while, called every few months to check on me, invited me to his wedding, sent pictures of his kids. Good man, loyal friend, the kind of soldier who makes America worth fighting for. But I couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle his kindness, his forgiveness, his refusal to blame me for what happened. So I stopped answering his calls, changed my number, cut myself off from the only people who understood what we'd been through. Last I heard, he'd made Sergeant Major and was running basic training somewhere in Georgia, teaching new soldiers how to stay alive in combat, probably saving lives every day with the lessons he learned watching me fuck up in Afghanistan. Jenkins got married to that girlfriend of his, had 2 more kids, lives somewhere in North Carolina, works for a defense contractor doing logistics support. Still uses a prosthetic leg, but he gets around fine. Sends me a Christmas card every year, always signed the same way. No hard feelings, LT, no hard feelings, as if forgiveness were that simple. Rodriguez went to college, became a teacher. Last I heard, he was working at a middle school in Detroit, teaching kids about history and geography, and probably never mentioning that he once called in artillery strikes on wedding parties and funeral processions. Martinez retired as a sergeant major after 25 years. Living somewhere in Texas now, raising grandkids and probably telling them stories about the good old days when soldiers knew right from wrong. They all moved on. They all found ways to live with what we did, but I never could. Because here's the thing, nobody tells you about leadership. When you give an order that gets people killed, their ghosts don't haunt the people who pulled the trigger. They haunt the person who gave the command. 7 civilians, 7 people who trusted American soldiers to protect them, who believed in democracy and freedom and all the things we said we were fighting for. 7 people who died because a 24-year-old kid from Ohio couldn't read a map under pressure. Their names were Fatima, age 7, Ahmad, age 9, Mariam, age 34, Khadija, age 28, Abdul Rahman, age 16, Muhammad Gul, age 57, and Haji Abdul, age 72. I know their names because I made it my business to find out. Made trips to the Afghan Community Center in Cleveland, tracked down relatives who'd immigrated to America, learned their stories and their dreams and everything they'd lost when my artillery rounds fell short. Fatima wanted to be a teacher. Ahmad collected smooth stones from the river. Mariam had just given birth to her 2nd child. Khadija was pregnant. Abdul Rahman wanted to study engineering in America. Muhammad Gul raised sheep and told stories to his grandchildren. Haji Abdul had been fighting the Taliban since before I was born. All dead because of my order. My mistake. My failure. The army calls it collateral damage. The media calls it fog of war. Politicians call it the price of freedom. I call it murder.